Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWROOM. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 10th of November 2021, and these are the stories that we'll be talking about in detail during the course of our show. We will begin with the arrival of the Afghan Interim Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi, who is going to arrive here today on a 3-day visit to Pakistan as the head of a delegation for wide-ranging talks with the authorities. There's going to be a meeting of the Troika Plus tomorrow as well, of which he will be part. At the same time, India is hosting talks on Afghanistan, but there's no Afghan official involved or invited, and of course Pakistan and China are also not taking part in it. And of course we all know about India's role as far as the region is concerned. At the whole crux of it is the humanitarian aid issue in Afghanistan. Will the world react in due time? That is going to be our first segment. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns climate change, COP26, and the different pledges that have been made by the different countries, by the different heads of organizations that are present at the COP26, whether it be to reduce the coal emission in a certain number of decades or other pledges. The countries have been forward as far as their pledges are concerned, but will these pledges translate into action? How important is it, seeing that the temperature of the world is going to rise considerably every passing year? This is going to be our second segment. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about the U.S. House of Representatives Committee, who is investigating the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol. We all remember that. We saw the footages that. We did stories on that as well. And now it has been said that the former U.S. President Donald Trump's White House records can now be accessed by this committee to understand more about what happened in reality. Although Donald Trump's lawyers have tried to block the access, nevertheless, the access has now been given. What will it reveal? This is going to be our third story. And finally, we'll be talking about Asad Umar Saab, who has tweeted some very heartening news as far as the vaccinations are concerned. He says that 50% of the country's eligible population has received at least one dose of COVID-19. That is very important because now winter is upon us, and it is in these winter seasons that COVID-19 kind of escalates rapidly. We've seen that happening in Europe. We've seen the number of cases increase tremendously. So in order to prevent the further spread of COVID-19, it's very important that everybody get vaccinated, and so this is heartening news. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the visit of the Afghan Interim Foreign Minister, Mr. Muttaqi, who is going to arrive here on a 3-day official visit. Pakistan-Afghan relations, and of course the extended Troika meeting that is going to happen tomorrow. How important are Pakistan-Afghan relations, and how important is for the world to react very quickly as far as the humanitarian aid to Afghanistan is concerned? More in the following report.
The prescient predictions of Pakistan regarding looming humanitarian and strategic disaster in Afghanistan after Western abandonment have proven right. The scourge of terrorism in Afghanistan has reared its ugly head again, posing substantial security threat to regional and global stakeholders. The lives of millions of Afghans are at stake against the backdrop of acute hunger and widespread famine. Pakistan has persistently reminded the international community about its moral duty to avert humanitarian crisis in the war-ravaged country. In order to further ratchet up its pragmatic diplomatic efforts, Pakistan is set to host a meeting of the extended Troika, and thus interim Afghan foreign minister as well as special envoys from the United States, Russia and China would be reaching Islamabad. The extended Troika is the most important and potent grouping of the key Afghan stakeholders, and its current session will address the relevant security challenges, humanitarian dimensions and joint framework to promote peace, security and stability in the country. In the media briefing after the post-cabinet meeting chaired by Prime Minister Imran Khan, the government spokesperson Fawad Chaudhry revealed that the federal cabinet, in a passionate appeal, had urged the global community, especially the Muslim Ummah, to rally support for averting humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. A recent UN report estimates that some 23 million out of the total 38 million population of Afghanistan will not have enough food to get through the winter unless aid is revived, as children have so far died because of hunger in Afghanistan. Islamabad remained at the forefront to chart sustainable, inclusive solution to the Afghan and relentlessly urged the international community to engage with the interim Afghan government to mutually combat emerging challenges emanating from post-US country.
Now we talk more about the emerging humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. Pakistan's pledge to bring that aid at the quickest, and also the extended Troika meeting that is happening tomorrow, the arrival of Mr. Amir Khan Muttaqi, who's the interim foreign minister. We've been joined by Dr. Farah, who's a foreign affairs expert. Dr. Saiba, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saiba, let's begin with the humanitarian aid to Afghanistan. I'm extremely concerned about the world not doing enough. What's your take on that? Now that Pakistan is also hosting important countries such as China, Russia, United States tomorrow in the extended Troika, do you feel these countries might pledge that the aid will come to Afghanistan quicker or better, sooner than anticipated?
I think, first of all, America is providing. There's some echo in the voice. All right.
No, it's fine. We can hear you properly.
Yeah. All right. So I think America is providing this opportunity to all the regional actors like China and Russia, who is taking an edge there in getting all the humanitarian assistance to reach out to the Afghan population. I think America should release the fundings that belongs to the Taliban, the $9 billion I'm speaking about. And by not releasing those funds, what America is doing is it is showcasing itself as a villain of peace in the region and a villain of to Afghanistan and the people of Afghan. So I think...
wouldn't it go against it? Because on the one hand, it pledges the money, the aid, and on the other hand, that aid is not really reaching Afghanistan in due time.
Even the aid is not reaching out to Afghanistan. I think they are so reluctant to accept their fall in Afghanistan. And the situation is getting more and more intense with each passing day. And I think it's high time for America and for the West to understand that the current Afghanistan
hasn't
is a reality.
The chapter closed down? Hasn't a new page turned? Shouldn't they move along with time instead of reeling in the past and, of course, thinking of what happened and what should have happened, in fact?
Well, I think there are so many pages even turned on, but they are not accepting the fact, the reality that is happening today, and that is that Taliban are in power and Afghanistan is a different Afghanistan now, where American influence is getting weaker and weaker with each passing day. And whatever America is doing these days, I think that is leading towards further disaster. And with all the frozen money, America is also setting an example, what's called an ugly precedent for the world, that America is not a credible country where your assets, your financial assets can be kept there. So,
Dr. Farah, do you feel that the US might change its tactics in the coming days? We've got Thomas West, who is the new US Special Representative for Afghanistan, who's reaching Islamabad also later this week to clarify some kind of US expectations as far as the Taliban is concerned and the future government in Afghanistan is concerned. Now that we have that, we have the extended Troika meeting tomorrow that is happening, in which the representatives from the US are also taking part. What do you feel could happen as far as the US side is concerned? Do you feel that they might have a change of heart, that there might be some kind of increase in the pledges for aid for Afghanistan or their foreign policy as far as this region is concerned?
I think America has to change its approach towards Afghanistan altogether, and I think they are realizing, because it's not only for that they are really interested in providing all the humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan. That could be a small part of it, but the larger part is American assets are involved. Like they have invested more than $83 billion on training and providing all the military equipments there in Afghanistan in the 20 years. And they left behind around 75,000 vehicles and around 600,000 weaponry and around 200 aircrafts. So what will happen if the Taliban are not getting the money that they really that belongs to Afghanistan? America is
you've got the IMF aid that is frozen. You've got the World Bank aid that is frozen, and you've got the Afghan, Central Reserve Bank's of aid that is also frozen as far as the US is concerned. We'll be back in detail discussing what is happening in Afghanistan, but after a short break. Stay tuned. We're discussing Afghanistan, whether it be the arrival of aid in due time, whether it be Afghanistan in the regional consensus and the regional context. We've been joined by Dr. Farah Naz, who's a foreign affairs expert. Dr. Farah Naz, you were talking about the change in US policy towards Afghanistan and towards the region, and you said that you don't see any major change happening in the coming months. Why is that so?
I think the change is that America is not accepting its fall there and its failure there, and they are so reluctant to accept the ground realities, whatever is happening in Afghanistan. And I think it's high time that they have to move on. They have to learn their lesson and to move on. If they continue in the same phase, it will bring a lot of disaster, not only for America, but for the entire region. And trust me, the regional countries will never, ever let it happen. And I would say, coming back to the frozen funds and the financial assistance and humanitarian aid and all of that, I think America, by freezing the funds, as I mentioned earlier, it is proving itself as an unreliable custodian of financial assets, and then other states are not going to trust them. When it comes to Taliban, if the Taliban are not receiving their funds in time, what will happen is they are going to rely on the poppy business. And if we could see on the graphs there, the poppy that when America was there, its cultivation and its production increased by 2017. It increased by 37%. And by 2020, the gate value of the OPM was around $350 million. So by 2017, it could be around more than $500 million. So
I mean,
the
there's
money
not
is
just the
going?
question of poppy cultivation and increase in that cultivation. There's also the instability factor within Afghanistan. If you do not give them the proper food and let them survive the winter properly, they will resort to other means.
Yes, they will resort to other means because they have to survive and they have to feed their population. And I think that's in the best interest of all the Afghan who are in power and who are living there as citizens. So if the money is not flowing to them, if they don't have the power to the power of money, I mean to say, if they don't have the power to fuel their institutions, so they're definitely going to get involved into other means, and they will be looking up to all the regional actors. Along with that, if we speak about Afghanistan, whatever Afghan and Taliban are holding is, they are holding a large sum of the weaponry that and the equipment, military equipments that America left behind. So what if it's more than 83 billion worth of money? So what if they start selling that in the market, in the black market? Ultimately, that is leading towards spreading American technology all over the world. End of the day,
That,
who is at the
that I
losing end?
totally agree with you, Dr.
It's not in
Farahnas.
the
Let's go
best.
to another whole aspect of it all, of Afghanistan, discussion on Afghanistan, future of Afghanistan. We have the extended Troy committee that is happening tomorrow, Thursday in Islamabad. Of course, Mr. Amir Muttaqi is coming for that and other discussions as well. At the same time, we've got the meeting that is happening, the talks that are happening in India, where Iran is present, where Russia is also present, where the Central Asian countries are also present. Of course, China and Pakistan refuse to attend because of India's belligerent attitude as far as the region is concerned, and of course, proxy war in Pakistan through Afghanistan is concerned. There are two different parallel meets happening as far as the future of Afghanistan is concerned. On the one, there is Afghan presence. On the other, in India, there is no Afghan presence at all. Which is going to be a success in your point of view, and which holds more value?
I think where there is Afghan presence, it holds more value, because if we accept it or if we don't accept it, Taliban are the leaders of Afghanistan. The sooner we accept and realize the fact, I think the better it would be. If we don't, the disaster will be too big to handle. So whatever is happening on the other side, it does not bother me. Whatever is happening here, it affects me, because my state, from my, I mean, our regional interests, our stakes are involved in Afghanistan, and the regional countries will never let it go into the drain the way the West is planning and thinking about, because there is not a single option of failing Taliban altogether. So America has left the ground for China, other regional powers like China and Russia, to come and to have India. What sort of stakes India is having here? I'm not getting that joke. China, I can clearly see it. But India has played its role when Americans were here. If America has left and they are not taking care of what mess they have left behind and how to handle it now, instead of handling it, they are further aggravating the situation. And in this situation, what can we see? The future of Afghanistan. It
Dr.
seems to be
Farahnas,
from
we've had
American
it in
lens, it seems to be blamed.
Dr. Farahnas, we've had it in camera briefing given to our parliamentarians by the military leadership on the internal and external security issues that plague Pakistan. That, of course, included Afghanistan, and of course, the opposition and the government were on the same wavelength as far as Afghanistan and Pakistan's attitude towards Afghanistan and way of reacting towards Afghanistan is concerned. Now, in October, end of October, when our Foreign Minister Shabbir Qureshi Sahab had gone to Kabul on his return, he had pledged 5 billion rupees as in aid to Afghanistan. Do you feel other countries should also follow suit? Because it is almost mid, I mean, today is, we are almost the middle of November. Nevertheless, we don't see any major pledge for aid from the neighboring countries of Afghanistan. Why is that so?
I think since like 15th of August, it's almost getting 3 months of the Taliban regime in power. So I would say the pressure was quite intense, and all states were in kind of confusion, what to do, what not to do, which side to choose and which side to leave. So I think now the fog is settling down and things are getting clearer. And we can see that, as I mentioned earlier, the regional states will never ever fail Taliban for their own states. It's not like they're a big fan of Taliban, but their stakes are involved, their interests are involved. So of course, humanitarian assistance and aid, they're going to progress from all of the states who are involved there. And it's not only the aid that will be flowing to Afghanistan into Kabul. The states are going to, the other regional actors, they are going to start economic and diplomatic ties with Afghanistan. And for that, getting recognition is one of the major hindrance in the way of having smooth relationship with Kabul. So for that, I think Taliban also needs to help themselves first. And I think it's high time that they do something so other states also come forward and do something for them. Otherwise, all of the states can't do anything unless they help themselves. So for that, the two major conditions of having an inclusive government, broad-based government, and women representation, and the non-usage of their soil for terrorism. So these conditions need to be met by Taliban.
These are very important questions, but another question on which there are a lot of apprehensions from the West is the inclusivity of the Afghan government, that it needs to be more inclusive. Do you feel the Afghan government will also take that into consideration?
I think they have to. There's no other option. There's no other option with the Taliban but to make it more inclusive. But here, the definition of inclusive is very important. If the West and America particularly, if they are looking up to having Ashraf Ghani, Hamid Karzai, and Amrullah Saleh sort of people sitting in the Taliban government, that's not going to happen. So what Taliban could do is, if they have to make the government more broad-based and they have to compromise on some of the Pashtun and to include more ethnic groups into it, they should do it. They should resolve the conflict, and along with that, they should represent and like all ethnic groups and minorities sitting there in their government. At the same time, make firm commitment to for not using their soil for terrorist activities.
When you
within
speak
the
of
region.
commitments, Dr. Farahnas, I'd like to have an interesting point of view from you on expectations. What are Afghanistan's expectations from the neighboring countries, and especially Pakistan? And what are Pakistan's expectations from Afghanistan, apart from the non-use of its territory against Pakistan that has been the case in the past many years? Do you feel there are more expectations from the Pakistani side as far as Afghanistan is concerned? And do you feel that the Afghan government, this new Afghan Taliban government, has also some expectations from Pakistan that it needs to abide by?
I think I would say the stability in Afghanistan has direct impacts on the stability and prosperity of Pakistan, because we have seen during the war on terror we have lost more than $100 billion, and we have lost around 8,000 to 10,000 of soldiers, and more than 80,000 human loss has been witnessed. And I think to bring security, the barbed wiring, we have spent a lot of money on that. We know the price of extremism. We know what price refugees inflow bring along to the economic and what sort of dents it gives to the country's economic prosperity. So in that situation where we are struggling through several problems, we are still ready to help and support Afghans and Talibans in their crisis situation. But of course, like all other countries and the rest of the world, there's no compromise on providing representative government, which is broad-based, and of course, a credible assurance of non-usage of their soil for terrorist activities, because what that all the terrorist activities that is happening across the border is affecting Pakistan. The TTP and the BLA, we need assurance on that. So once they give us those assurances, I think we will be ready to do anything for their prosperity and their development. But they
All right,
need
Dr.
to do
Farah's
something
last question
first.
from you. Do you feel that India's attitude or India's influence towards Afghanistan is going to remain in the same manner as it was in the previous governments? Will it cast a shadow as far as Afghanistan's future and Afghanistan's relationship with Pakistan is concerned? What's your comment on that?
Well, Omar, that's a very interesting question. I was really looking up to it because India has its own interest involved when it comes to Afghanistan, and their interest is to create instability and terrorist activities in Pakistan. And I think it is in the best interest of India to keep our western border busy. And from, you know what I mean from busy. So they put lots of efforts for their presence in Afghanistan so our military can move from the eastern side to the western side. And we paid a huge financial and human loss to that. So, and when we were moving our military personnel from the eastern side, I'm not saying it that we moved all of them to the western border, but we moved a chunk of them when the western border was getting busier in terms of terrorist activities from Afghanistan across the border here in Pakistan. So India was busy in the revocation of Article 370 and affecting the life of Kashmir. So they were denting us there on the other side where they made us busy here and then they were trying to get advantage on the other side. So we can't let it happen one more time. We have seen it. We will try our level best to stabilize our western border. We can't afford it. At one point, we have spent a lot of money on on fencing and creating this barbed wire. So why would we, in despite that, there are several casualties happening. So India is in the best interest of India to keep the western border busier in terms of terrorist activities and instability for us, but we will never let it happen.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Farah, Foreign Affairs expert, who have joined us and who have talked to us about Afghanistan, Pakistan-Afghan relations and the future of Afghanistan, specifically in the context of the humanitarian aid that it so badly needs. And we've got Mr. Amir Khan Muttaqi, who's the Indian Foreign Minister, who's going to come to Islamabad as well on a 3-day visit. Tomorrow is the extended Troika meeting, which includes representatives from Russia, China, the US, as well as Afghanistan. Let's go to our second story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, climate change. COP26 in Glasgow, different pledges made by important countries of the world, and the increase in temperature across the world on a very fast rate. Will the world be able to do the needful in due time? More in the following report.
The climate crisis poses strenuous global challenges. Extreme weather events linked to climate change, including wildfires, hurricanes, famines, and droughts, have made headlines over the past year. For almost 3 decades, world governments have met nearly every year to forge a global response to the climate emergency. The elusive goal, which dominated the latest UN-sponsored climate talks in Glasgow, Scotland, was catalyzing global action to avert impending climate-induced catastrophe by finding ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions globally in an equitable manner. The United Nations Climate Agency has published a first draft featuring political decision participant countries will undertake against the backdrop of COP26 summit. The first draft of the cover decision asks countries to revisit and strengthen the 2030 targets in their nationally determined contributions as necessary to align with the Paris Agreement temperature goal by the end of 2022. Ironically, key findings of research published in Glasgow from world's top climate analysis coalition, Climate Action Tracker, contrasts sharply with COP26 summit's optimism. The sobering assessment from Climate Action Tracker, that's the CAT, the world's most respected climate analysis coalition, was based on countries' short-term goals for the next decade and highlighted credibility gap between talk and action after ambitious COP26 climate talks have concluded. The key highlights of this report paint bleak picture of climate-ravaged world by arguing that the world is on track for disastrous levels of global heating far in excess of the limits in the Paris Climate Agreement, despite a flurry of carbon-cutting pledges from governments at the UN COP26 summit.
Maryam Shabbir, leading environmentalist, joins us online. Maryam, thank you very much to have joined us. Maryam, COP26 is very important under the current circumstances that the world is reeling, and of course the changes that are happening across the world. Do you feel that the world understands really? Do you feel the COP26 has any value whatsoever as far as actions are concerned? I'm not talking of pledges.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that. As far as talks are concerned, there is concern, but as far as coal is concerned, I would say there is little progress because the kind of pledges that are being made this time is kind of history. But if that will be put into action, that would, do something about it's no more debate about 1.5 degree. We know that it's about 1.8 degree now.
And now it's 2.4 degrees as per the latest report that has come.
Sorry, come again?
I said that now the temperature that they say, the world, the rate at which it is heating up is 2.4 degrees Celsius, no longer 1.4 or 1.8.
Yeah, that would be the case if pledges are not made into action, of course. And we know that world leading economies like US, China, India, they have not made such long-term pledges. They have made actually long-term, but they have not committed anything short-term, which is very effective. They are saying that they will end course, let's say India in 2070, China net zero neutrality by 2060.
2070 is so far away. We're in 2021, Maryam. We cannot wait 50 years.
Yes, world cannot wait. Even world cannot wait for next 5 years if business as usual continue, which I predict would be continued because you see the crisis, energy crisis, and demand for electricity which is being produced from coal. This increased this time in in European countries as well. Even in America, this summer there was a shortage of electricity due to increasing heat waves, which is of course again due to climate change. So shifting away from coal would be biggest challenge even for the bigger economies as well. Capacity is right there.
Just as the US, it would be a huge challenge for them to shift from coal because a lot of their economy is dependent on it as we speak.
That's right. That's right. Their economies are dependent on that and moving away from coal. Of course, they have resources and capacity. They can do that. But, coal, which has entered our lives, unfortunately, in many forms. I don't know how many years it would take, but we have to take it out. There is no alternate action, and there is no time for it.
When you talk of action, Maryam, when you talk of action, when you talk of time, we've seen so many disaster movies on environmental issues in the past as well, and I can name quite a few. But nevertheless, what needs to be done for the people of the world and for the leaders of the world to be sensitized against this very, very important danger that looms across and that looms on our heads?
I think instead of making 5-year pledges, which was highlighting in the studies you mentioned as well, they have to meet every year to bring a change and to limit temperature. And when we say that shifting away from coal and transition to clean energy, they should also sit together and help each other with climate finance and clean technology transfer and with the capacity. And the kind of workforce and labor which is involved in coal sector, they should be retrained and their capacity should be built for clean energy sources so that they can be utilized and they are not left behind, because that is huge industry and we cannot leave people who are working in that sector alone. We have to take them with that. And also civil society organizations, especially, what they can do is to initiate dialogues between these businesses based on fossil fuels and government. They should facilitate those dialogues so that trust can be built and they can move away from those businesses to clean energy sources. That is what is needed right now. And I think commitment from the upper tier of the political commitment from the upper tier is required in this regard. Local governments can't really do enough when it comes to resource mobilization. So that is what is required right now.
Maryam, is fossil fuel the only issue that plagues the world as far as climate change is concerned, or do we need to move also on fossil fuel reduction, but also above and beyond that and take care of other issues that lead to issues such as climate change?
Apart from fossil fuel, of course, other sectors are also very important. Many countries are dependent on agriculture. Many reforms are needed in that sector as well, because that also contributes to climate change, and climate change ultimately also impacts agriculture as well. And then transport sector, which is the second biggest contributor to air pollution, which cannot be neglected as well, and we also need to improve in that sector as well. So there are a lot of other sectors and nature-based solutions, which is also, of course, discussion happened at COP as well. And of course, taking youth into policy making. We do take youth and we discuss about youth, but when it comes to policy making, we do not really make them an important stakeholder. So making them as important stakeholders is very important, because they have fresh ideas. They can be utilized in SMEs for environment related solutions. So that is I think where our focus should be.
Maryam, why are climate activists rubbishing all these pledges that are being made by the leaders at COP26? Why are they saying that it's nothing but just words?
If you look at the history, it's 26th Conference of Party in a row, and commitments made at Paris Agreement since 25. They are just talking and talking and talking, and they are right. I think being a youth myself, I call myself youth as well. So and other youth who are activists as well. They are right, because we have been hearing that 1.5 degree. I think I was born and I was hearing that the 1.5 degree discussion. And when it comes to actions which should be translated, it is not done enough. It's 26 COP in a row, and just look at the progress. They are really behind. That's why they and of course they this people involved were there as well, who are very core members. They also support. Some countries made commitments, but many fossil fuel companies. When I'll come again to fossil fuel, because that is the bigger contributor to global emissions. So they are state-owned companies. So if state is not acting, then the youth is right. They have to correct them that you're wrong. You have to act now. You don't have to talk.
All right, Maryam, is economy, is money superseding such important issues such as climate change, especially when it concerns important countries of the West? And if so, what kind of pressure needs to be put on such countries so that they act fast and act in the right manner?
When it comes to economies who are dependent on fossil fuel, there are many, but the pressure which developing countries and media and youth should be putting on developed world combined, which is, I think they are doing some part, but when it comes to climate actions and fulfilling commitments, I see it's other way around. Developed world and rich nations are putting pressures on developing countries to not use fossil fuels and to put cap on that, and they are not looking at their homes. So I think there is a lot of opportunity as well at these COPs. Other businesses like clean businesses, hydro related, wind related. Name any other resources, and there are a lot of innovations in agriculture sector as well, in solar sector as well. So there are a lot of opportunities as well for businesses to emerge, for small and medium enterprises as well, for environment related solutions. So they have to look out for the ways to utilize those forums and to shift focus from their fossil fuels to other sectors as well, which are which can give a lot of money to those economies.
All right, Maryam, also, the big countries don't react the way they should, and it's the smaller countries that bear the brunt of it all. Countries such as Pakistan, for example, that is not emitting as much of fossil fuel or producing as much, is not as coal dependent, nevertheless is one of the 10 most vulnerable countries as far as climate change is concerned. What can developing countries such as Pakistan or others that are extremely affected by this issue that we call climate change do on their individual basis or with countries around them in order to mitigate this problem that is plaguing slowly and steadily the world?
When it comes to actions being taken by developing countries, many countries are doing enough. Let's take the example of our own country, Pakistan. It is not part of problem, but still it is contributing towards solution.
Agreed.
We are think 10 billion tree tsunami. We are introducing electric vehicles. We are shifting our focus. We have put cap on Sahiwal coal power plant under CPEC projects. We are not letting them to bring more coal and explore more coal in our country. So we as, of course, there are sectors where you know, a lot needs to be done as well, but we are doing enough already, and I think every country is doing in their best capacity, and we can do more if, you know, developed world translate their words into action when it comes to loss and damage and mitigation and adaptation and climate change. You know, this climate fund. They need to, you know, provide Pakistan that opportunity and other developing country where they can transfer clean technology and take actions for climate change related disasters. And there was a breakthrough for South Africa as well, you know, with other countries where they have signed agreement that they will fund South Africa to move away from fossil fuels to clean energy. But we haven't heard such news for Pakistan, you know, which is very sad. I wondered that those who were present at negotiation, what they were doing over there when South Africa was negotiating for funds. And I think Pakistan needs to be more active instead of doing photo shoot over there. They should be practically doing something when it comes to negotiations.
Point taken. Finally, Maryam Shabbir Sahaba, the Climate Action Tracker's assessment of increase in 2.4 degrees centigrade, how realistic do you feel it is in the, for example, let's put it on a very short term, in the next 5 years?
You know, Omar, I see that those pledges made by many countries, you know, it was around at least 40 countries who have made such pledges. It will take a lot of time for them to, you know, move away from fossil to clean energy. So,
but in the meantime, won't the temperature increase? I mean, won't this CAT assessment become, come to reality of?
It looks like reality, but look around the world. You know, this summer, Canadian glaciers melted, our glaciers are melting, you know, in flooding in Germany and Belgium, forest fires in many states of America, you know, it is already happening. And I think if they world
floods
do not
in
act,
countries where we had never heard of. Of course, but Maryam, you know, the important thing in my point of view, and I'm sure you agree with me, is that action needs to be taken. You know, enough of words. I think it's time for real action to be taken by the developed countries and the developing countries together as one, in order to curtail the further, this deterioration of what we call a climate change before it's really too late and before we can no longer do anything. Thank you very much, Maryam Shabbir, to have joined us and to have talked to us about COP26, the pledges made, and whether they will really translate into action. Let's come to our last two stories quickly. First is from the United States of America, where a federal judge on Tuesday rejected a bid by the former US President Donald J. Trump to help secret papers about his actions and conversations leading up to and during the January 6th attack on the Capitol by his supporters. We all remember that. We watched the visuals as well. We saw how they trampled the Capitol and how these supporters came inside and what kind of havoc they created as well. Now, Mr. Trump had sought to invoke executive privilege under which presidential documents could be kept secret, but it has not been accepted by the federal judge, and here it has been said that these will be made public and a proper inquiry will be made on how much was the former president and his office involved in this riot on the Capitol. A lot of revelations might come in front of the media and in front of all of us in the coming days, so we'll be waiting for that and we'll give you updates when that comes along. And our last story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns COVID-19. We know that across the world, especially in Europe, the number of cases are increasing because of winter season. Nevertheless, in Pakistan, the percentages are quite less. When it comes to Islamabad, 29 new cases, Gilgit-Baltistan only 1 new case, Punjab reports 121 cases, 3 deaths, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa 86 new cases, Balochistan 11 more cases. So of course the number of cases are less. Nevertheless, it's very important to get yourselves vaccinated, and that is what is heartening from Pakistan as well, because Asad Umar Saab has tweeted and he has said that we have reached an important milestone of 50% of the country's eligible population receiving at least 1 dose. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, he said, has also become the second province to vaccinate half of its eligible population with at least 1 dose. And of course, yesterday he said Pakistan achieved a high milestone of 1.7 million doses given to people across the country. This is very good. We need to continue working in that respect, and we need to get both our doses before it's a bit too late, before this whole pandemic could spread in one way or the other, and also continue following the SOPs. I can't, put more pressure or emphasize on it enough. We really need to do the needful so that we continue to remain on the number of cases that we are currently in Pakistan. Also, at the same time, we need to be very vigilant as far as dengue is concerned, so that the number of cases also continue decreasing. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories and segments that pertain to you, us, our society and Pakistan. Stay tuned, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.